אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה לעסוק בדברי תורה לעסוק בדברי תורה לעסוק בדברי תורה לעסוק בדברי תורה. Okay, let's go over a very brief from last time, very briefly. Very briefly. Okay? We talked about God. We talked about the four-letter name of God, the Yud, He, Vav, and He. We talked about how, if you look at the handouts, how that four-letter name of God is the skeleton key that unlocks everything, how its numerical value adds up to being 26, and how if you take the letter Aleph, its numerical value is 26 as well as, yes. You can just chime in and yell.
Do you have an extra copy of that?
In your hand.
Is that this week's?
Oh, there. No, that's the whole thing. That's the whole.
The whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I guess we could probably put up there in some way.
Yeah.
We talked about how that name also is the idea of 26. It's loving the love, both understanding our love for God and God's love for us. We talked about the question of being where are you, and the answer about being present. We went down. We broke through the word Bereshit. Okay, let's go through that just one more time, because I know it was a little. We talked about the name of God. If you take it vertically, how it is the image of human beings as well. This is when we're created in the image of God. This is if you take God's name and you go this way, it looks like a human being. And we looked at the word Bereshit, which I guess if you watched the past video, if you were here, then it made sense. Yes, did that help? Because you were watching it on video. Did it help?
I did.
Okay, did it make sense or no?
It was a little hard to see the forward.
So now you have it right here.
I'm happy to
So,
revisit
okay,
it.
now you have it right here.
Okay.
Okay, and again, the idea being that if you take this word, which is a nonsensical word, like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and you take the letters, the first, middle, and looks like the last and last spell the word for container, first, second, and third spell the word for create, the second, third, and fourth spell the word for intellect or head, the third and fourth spell the word for fire or passion, the third, fourth, and fifth spell the word might, human being, and the sixth is a T for Toph for Torah, which means guidelines. Okay? And so we went through all an understanding of that. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Sure.
We're good? Okay. All right. So let's continue. We went through the creation story a little bit, and we went through a little bit of the Noah stuff, right? Okay. So now we're going to talk about the first time there really is a Jew. Now we all know the first Jew is Abraham Avinu, Abraham our father. We find the first description of him, or just discussion of him, we find in our Torahs. You have plenty of Bibles here to take, but we find it in last week's Torah portion, actually, which is called Lech Lecha. Okay, it is, I have the exact page here. So it begins on chapter 12 of the book of Bereshit of Genesis. And right before that it says that there's this guy Terah who has a son, and one of his sons is Avram. His name is not Abraham, it's Avram. Can I erase all this now?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay to do?
I took a picture of it last week, so we can post that too.
Okay, so it's my messy writing. So Terah is this great character. There's a lot of midrash. Remember we said midrash are stories that explain the things that aren't necessarily written in the Bible. They're oral tradition. Okay? So it's 10 generations from Adam to Noah. Then it becomes another 10 generations from Noah to Abram. Okay? So the 9th generation after Noah, there's this guy named Terah. There's some great stories about Terah. Terah is an idol maker. Okay? He makes idols for a living. He's very good at it. It is not a good thing for him that his son is a troublemaker. Avram, his son, is this guy that really is asking questions. And there's some great stories. I guess I have to dry that off. There's some great stories about Terah as an idol maker and Avram, his problem-causing son. So there's the one story some of you may have heard about one day Terah walks into his idol shop, and all the idols are broken except for one really big one, which is holding an axe. And Terah says, what are you doing? Why did you break all the idols? And Avram says, I didn't do that. Someone brought in an offering and all the idols fought over it and the big guy won. And Terach says, that's ridiculous, they're just stone. And Avram says, well, let your ears hear what your words say. Right? There's a really beautiful story that at one point Avram, and it's told in different ways, but that Avram thinks to himself, okay, the sun is what is most powerful because the sun is here, the sun is God, and the cloud passes by the sun and makes it shadowy. So he says, oh, the cloud is more powerful, it must be God. And the nighttime comes and there's no clouds. And all there's is the darkness as well. Because nighttime must be more powerful. And then the wind blows away everything, and now we can see the stars. The stars must be more powerful. And then the sun comes up. He says, oh, the sun must be more powerful. Wait, there must be just one God. So Avram identifies that there's one God. He's the first one to really identify that in Western culture. And this portion of the Torah, Lech Lecha, is the time that we are introduced to Avram. We find it in chapter 12 of the book of Bereshit. And you have plenty of Bibles you can look at. And it says here that God said to Avram, go for yourself from your land, from your relatives, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. But that's not really what it says. It says, Vayomer Adonai, and God said, El Avram, to Avram, Lech Lecha. We'll come back to that. Actually, let's deal with that first. This can be interpreted so many ways. Lech means go. It's a command version of go. Lech does not mean please go. It means, hey, go. Okay? Go on, you can just yell out a question. It's okay. So Lech Lecha means go. Lech means go. Lecha could mean to yourself, into yourself, with yourself, or for yourself. Okay? It can mean any and all of those things. All right? So he might be saying go into yourself, go to yourself, go for yourself, go with yourself. Or it might be meaning all those things. And it continues, Artzacha, from your land, from the land in which you were born. Miroledecha, umibeit avicha, and from the house of your father. Okay, the house of your ancestors. So go away from yourself, from your land, from all the people you're related to, from your father's house, el ha'aretz asher atzarcha, to a place that I will show you. So the first thing that God says to Avram is go and meditate. However you define meditation, it doesn't really matter. Meditation is going into yourself, to yourself, with yourself, by yourself, for yourself. Away from what you know, to a place that God shows you. Yogi Bhajan Khalsa, who was the man who brought Kundalini Yoga to this country, had a beautiful saying, and his saying was that prayer is when the one talks to the infinite, and meditation is when the infinite speaks to the one. It's a beautiful way of looking at it. So, the idea of just receiving. In our term, the word for meditation in Hebrew is hitbonadut or hisbodadus. It means to be by yourself, but still connected. It's related to the word bod and boded, to be both alone and be a branch. And the idea that you're alone, you're a branch of a tree, and you're alone, but you're not alone, right? Because you've got your leaves, and you've got your tree trunk, and the roots connect to everything else. So the very first statement that God ever says to the first Jew is go meditate. You're liking that, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's a great understanding. It's a great understanding of who we are as Jews. We are not a monotheistic tradition that is actually not accurate. We're a monistic tradition. It's not that we believe that there's one God and it's separate. We believe that everything is a part of one God. Okay, so we're actually more monism than monotheism. It's a misnomer. So he's told to go and act, right? And then he gets married, and he marries this woman named Sariah. So Avram and Sarai. Apparently Sarai gets not red print, but kind of a purplish red and blue. And they travel, and all sorts of things happen, but she does not have a child at all. And this is a big problem, because God is promising you're going to have children. And then this beautiful, beautiful thing happens, which is God makes a covenant. We find it in chapter 17. Okay? When Avram was 99 years old, Hashem appeared to Avram and said to him, I'm El Shaddai, another name for God, walk before me and be perfect. Now let's recap for a second. Noah, if we remember, Noah is told, that we're told that Noah walks with God. Yet Avram walks before God as imperfect. He's perfect that way. Can I write for 1 second? What that means is that because God is walking behind Avram, always there to catch him. And how do we teach a child to walk? We don't go in front of them, right? We go behind them, and we're like this, right? So God is always like this, leading us on. Make sense? And if we fall, God catches us. So we wear a little yarmulke, head cover, and reminds us that God's always behind us there to catch us. It's one of the reasons. So he makes this covenant. Now, what is a covenant? First of all, the word in Hebrew for a covenant is Breat, or Brees. Okay? In a covenant, there have to be, both parties have to agree to something, and they have to have an exchange of something. I'm making a covenant with you. I give you X, you give me Y. All right? This is the idea of a covenant. The first time we have a covenant, does anyone remember? First time we have a covenant is when the flood happens. And God makes a covenant. He gives a sign. He says, here's a rainbow, and I will never destroy you by water again. It does not mean he'll never destroy us by fire or anything else.
So was the whole thing with Adam, that wasn't a covenant,
It's not a covenant.
because there was an agreement.
He makes a covenant. Here's my sign. I have a covenant. I have a symbol. I have something that I'm giving to you. Well, the covenant is made with Avram. I'm going to go through a lot of Torah very quickly, so just yell out a question. Covenant is made with Avram. You're going to do the Breat Milah, the covenant of circumcision, and I will make your descendants as countless as the stars in the sky, as the sands of the desert. I will make you, this land will be your land, everything's going to be wonderful for you. There's always great promises. All based on giving up a foreskin. I'm not sure who got the best end of the deal. So, the point is that when we have that, it makes the Breat Milah, the covenant of circumcision, the primary commandment of Judaism. More important than any other one action that we do. It is what makes us a Jew, is the covenant. It is specifically for the man. We don't do, God forbid, to women. And there are a lot of reasons for it. One is because God tells us. One is because it's a commitment that our sexuality will be subservient to our spirituality. We're not going to be like animals. The interpretation that I really like a lot is that, because people say, well, why should I circumcise my child when, no one else, what do I do? The child's born perfect. Yes, the child is born perfect, but you still put outlet plugs on your outlets so they don't stick a fork in it, right? Child is born perfect, but you still teach them, right? You still do things. Well, in the same way, yeah, the child's born perfect, but I'm making an agreement that I'm going to be a partner with God in raising this child. Okay? So we have this Brit Milah, this covenant of circumcision. And everyone in Avram's household, everybody who's a male, gets this. And as a result, God says, and this is in 17, he says, you shall be a father of a multitude of nations, and your name shall no longer be called Avram, but your name shall now be Avraham. Sarah's name is no longer Sarai, it becomes Surah. Where's the H from? Remember that four-letter name? Right?
Yeah.
The H is going to come to their names. So now their names are going to become Avraham and Sarah. Okay? Now, he's promised this to Avram. And Avram takes this deal and he says he's going to make him, going to have children and everything else. And Avram has the faith to do just that. Look, I think there's all sorts of levels of faith. The level of faith is saying God has told me to cut off my foreskin and I will now do it is pretty intense. Okay, there's a guy when I went to school at Berkeley many years ago. There was a guy at Telegraph Road. Have you been up to Berkeley at all? So Telegraph Road is this street. Telegraph is this street that was sort of the heart of the whole countercultural movement.
not so much anymore.
Not so much, now it's all,
Eric and I were up there a few months ago.
yes, now they have to like go to the lottery and they're street sellers, it's a whole different world. Is People's Park still People's Park?
Didn't see it.
Okay, it's at the end of, or not at the end, it's a few blocks now on Telegraph, I think Telegraph and Hastings, remember, Rapids on Telegraph, farther down Telegraph and Shannon. But there was a guy on Telegraph who was a tarot card reader. You know, one of these guys giving readings. And then he wasn't there for a while, and then he had bandages on his eyes. And if you asked him what happened, he would say, I saw in the cards that I was to become blinded, and so I blinded myself. Now, I hear that and I think that's crazy, right? I think we all think that's Meshuggah. And yet, Avram talked to God who said, circumcise yourself. And he did, and we still do. Okay, and it's a beautiful thing. How many of you have done a bris? You've done, well, obviously you guys, but you've seen a bris, been to a bris.
2 sons.
Yeah, bris is pretty amazing. It's very, very beautiful. It's a very, very beautiful ceremony. At the bris, you know, we have a big chair called the Eliyahu, or the Kisei Shel Eliyahu Hanavi. It's a big chair, traditionally, and it's Elijah's chair. And we pass the baby over this empty chair prior to the circumcision. And it's to show Elijah that we are still practicing the commandments, even though he thought we might not. It's kind of thumbing your nose at Elijah. And it gets his blessing as a result. Because Elijah at one point says that the people will stop practicing. And we don't, we still do it. It's very beautiful. And it's very scary when I hear political politicians saying they want to make circumcision illegal. That's terrifying to me. Because it wouldn't stop us, it just would be horrible. So, he also says, and if we look here for a minute, if we look at chapter 17, could someone please read verses 15 and go on for a little bit? 17, 15.
The promise to Sarah. Previously, the covenant was solely with Abraham. Now,
Where? Oh, no, you're looking at commentary. No, go up on the actual text. The one that you
starting-
have, that's all commentary. This is the actual text. That part of
Okay.
that.
And God said to Abraham,
There you go.
as for Sarai your wife, do not call her Sarai, for Sarah is her name. I will bless her. Indeed, I will give you a son through her. I will bless her, and she shall give rise to nations. Kings of people will rise from her. And Abraham threw himself upon his face and laughed. And he thought, shall a child be born to a 100-year-old man? And shall Sarah, a 90-year-old woman, give birth? And Abraham said to God,
Okay, so where it stops. So they laugh. That's the reaction to her giving birth. Sarah is unable to give birth. And earlier on, if we backtrack just a little bit to chapter 16, verse 1, we have this whole story about Hagar. Hagar gets purple. Okay? Sarah's not able to have a child, and so she says to Avram, I want you to have a child with my maidservant, and I will get the benefit of that as a result. And Hagar, and he says, are you sure about this? She goes, yeah, I want you to have a child, and that will be, that way, since I can't have a child, it'll be your child. And so she does, and out of that union comes Ishmael. Okay? And at this point, this is all Sarah's idea. It's not Abraham's idea to have this throuple, whatever the term currently is, not to have this mistress, but God says here that he's going to have Sarah have a child again, and Sarah doesn't believe it. No one believes it. Abraham doesn't. As we go down a little bit farther into the text, we find that Abraham gets circumcised. He circumcises all of his servants, and he circumcises his son, Ishmael. Okay? Ishmael is not a child when he's circumcised. So we know that that was that would be intense. It would be very intense thing, right?
well, none of the servants would have been children either, correct?
Correct. Correct. But this is his son.
All right, I'm finding a new job.
Yeah, it's you know. And they were all, so everyone's circumcised, okay? Now, someone read this Parsha of Vayera. Actually, this was last week's portion, look, that was 2 weeks ago. Someone please read Vayera, chapter 18, verse 1. Because remember, he's just finished doing the circumcision, right? He's just finished cutting off his foreskin with a dull rock and no anesthesia, okay? And now he's sitting outside of his tent. Someone please read it, 18:1.
The Lord appeared to him by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw 3 men standing near him.
Now, 3 men, 3 angels, they just look like 3 men. They suddenly have appeared.
As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, "My lords, if it please you, do not go past your servant."
So it doesn't matter what pain he's in. One of the first things that he does is hospitality. And to strangers. How many of us are really hospitable? Really hospitable. I have a friend who is devout Catholic, and every night at dinner, I think he has 5 or 6 kids, I swear, he and his wife, they share a glass of water, she gets pregnant. They have an extra chair and place set for any visitor who might come by. Hospitality. So he's hospitable to these angels. And let's fast forward a little bit, because he goes and gets some food, he wants their feet washed, drink. And he does all of this. And someone please read 18:19. This is one of the men, one of the angels saying this. 18, chapter 18, verse 19.
I
Says-
singled him out.
I'm sorry, so I apologize, yeah, verse 10, I apologize, verse 10, I apologize. I looked above my glasses, I got the wrong number, this is why I need to wear them.
This is the where it goes, and he said, I will
Yes.
surely return to
That's
you.
exactly it, and then the he that they're referring to is the angel. Okay, go on.
I will surely return to you at this time next year, and behold, Sarah your wife will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well on in years. The manner of women had ceased to be with Sarah. And Sarah laughed at herself, saying, After I have withered, I shall again have a delicate skin, and my husband is old. Then Hashem said to Abraham, Why is it that Sarah laughed, saying, Shall I in truth bear a child, though I have aged? Is anything beyond Hashem? At the appointed time I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah will have
Okay,
a son.
so she laughs. The word for laughter
Can't blame her.
is yitzchak, exactly.
Question, wanting to have a kid when you're that old.
Well, you know, first of all, he's gonna live a lot longer, so it's okay, but he chooses to, does this covenant, and the next thing is hospitality leads to childbirth. Go on.
Are the ages used in the Bible more allegorical? Because, you know, I've heard Noah lived to 900 and.
Well, he didn't, Methuselah did, but okay, he lived.
But obviously with our knowledge these days, it sounds ridiculous that anyone could.
Why does that sound ridiculous?
I don't know that biologically our bodies are meant to last that long.
Hold on a second.
But maybe they were then. I
Have
think
we
we lost,
deteriorated
yes.
that much?
I think
that-
we lost a lot.
The air, maybe it was the environment too.
I think
Those rains had to come
in
from
the-
somewhere.
somewhere in the dark ages.
Okay, so first of all, age is pretty relative, isn't it?
Mhm.
There's certainly people that live today well over 100 years.
Right,
There's certainly been people
few and far between.
justified who have lived well over 100 years and cultures like Tibet or Nepal or India or Native American cultures that we know of. God rest her soul, my grandma lived to be 100. If you had told someone in 1850 that so many people would live to be in their 70s, 80s, that today we would consider someone dying in their mid-70s as being young, they would look at you and say you were crazy in the Middle Ages. So, text says what text says. It's not like when we talked about the creation days, but there's no definition of what is a day. A year is a year. So, and should we laugh or can God do anything? It's an interesting statement. I don't want to say that the answer is this or the answer is that. I think it's something we each need to wrestle with. But look at the pattern that happens, because this is really important. He makes a covenant with God, and then he's hospitable. And out of that, you have childbirth. Okay? Right? Because right after she's going to get pregnant, she's going to have a baby. If he's not hospitable to the angels, then the angels don't come in, and he doesn't get blessed to have a child that year, does he? How important is hospitality? Does anyone remember or know why Sodom and Gomorrah are actually destroyed? Have you heard about Sodom and Gomorrah? There's two evil cities, and they're destroyed. Why are they destroyed? Because the people are not hospitable. So, hospitality is really, really important. And they have this child, and they have this baby child, and this child is named Yitzchak, which means laughter. And then you have this very challenging line where, actually before we get to that, right after that promise, if we go and we look at chapter 18, verse 23, we have this whole concept of Sodom, where God says, I'm going to destroy Sodom because it's evil. And Abraham says, and I quote, will you also stamp out the righteous along with the wicked? What if there were 50 righteous people in the midst of the city? Would you still stamp it out rather than spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous people within? And ultimately God says, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous people, then I would spare the entire place on their account. God goes, and Abraham goes on, wait a minute. Behold now, I desire to speak my Lord, although I am but dust and ash. What if the 50 righteous people shall lack 5? Would you destroy the entire city because of 5? And God says, I won't destroy it if I find 45. And Abraham keeps pushing. What if 40 would be found? I will not on account of 40. What if 30? I will not on account of 30. What if 20? I will not on account of 20. What if 10? I will not destroy on account of 10 people. And then God departs. From this, we learn a number of things. First of all, we learn it's okay to argue with God. And that's something you might want to tell your
Oh,
grandchildren.
I've been there.
It's okay to argue with God.
Oh, I've
I mean, I tell my boys, if you don't mind being angry with me, why don't you mind being angry with God? But you know I'm always on your side, so isn't God also? That's the first piece. The second piece is that we learn here about some more of the power of 10. 10 people committed to any one thing can change the world. That's why we have how many people in a minyan? 10. Later on, we're going to find the 10 spies don't have faith and they change things for the bad. But the 10 people, I wrote an article recently, I thought it was interesting in these impeachment hearings. Been going on. Did anyone watch the impeachment hearings? Anyone else disturbed by them?
Oh, yeah.
I was.
Multiple levels.
So what were you disturbed by?
Overall, the ease with which our peers lie.
Okay. What else? Because that's not a surprise.
I would just say, in the big picture, that people that we used to value as our allies are no longer our allies. Our relationship with Israel, and therefore the world's relationship with Judaism, is changing rapidly.
Okay.
I just see it kind of embodied in this one man in this one office.
Okay. Why do you, what disturbed you about it?
That the vast disparity between the forthrightness of at least the 3 people that have testified so far compared to the ugliness of the way some of the people interrogating them is, the lies, I mean, the obvious lies, they're shading,
So I was disturbed by something different than both those things.
What would you start
I
with?
was
and the difference,
extremely
the difference between the parties too, the way they're fighting. and
I was extreme, I'm not disturbed by the impeachment, I'm not disturbed by the lies, I'm not disturbed by the fighting. I actually don't have a problem with that, and our sages in the Talmud, they describe their dialogues as war between the sages,
Yeah.
right? I was appalled at the way that Schiff shut down, what's the woman's name from New York? Stephanie.
Stephanie, yeah.
Oh, her, yeah.
I was appalled because it's the first time I have ever seen, heard, or known about in any public gathering where a chair would say, "You're not recognized," because he doesn't like what's being said. That terrified me.
I don't know if I agree with that
That
interpretation of it.
But it terrified me, just like House Rule 660 terrified me, that we should have dialogue, and that there wasn't dialogue. So as a result, you had animosity between two monologues. There was a monologue on this side and a monologue on that side, and no dialogue. And that scares me. I wasn't looking at the content, I was looking at the process, if that makes sense.
No, I'm just,
It's a very different, just how I looked at it, the process really scared me. Because no matter what the truth may or may not be on either side, this side will never believe it if it's against them, and this side will never believe it if it's against them. Because it's not, there's no bipartisanship, there's no dialogue with anybody. And that was the first in this whole House Rule 660, being able to shut someone down. I've never heard of a chair, if I recognize you as the chair, and you want to give your time to Lois, that's part of Robert's Rules of Order, you have that right. It's the first time I've ever seen that didn't happen. And it really scared me.
didn't it happen beginning second day, either Tuesday or Wednesday, in the reverse?
No, because he controls the chair.
No, but, okay, what I'm looking at is, I thought that,
But I thought that time, she would have had time to speak later. It was that time was supposed to be limited to the chairperson,
Right, that's the point.
or the councils.
No, see, what they did is they made something called House Resolution 660, which puts all the power in the chair. All the power. They don't have to call any witness. The Republican side has no opportunity to call witnesses. And they cannot, Devin Nunes can speak as much as he wants, but he can't give any of his time to anybody else. Nobody else can give their time to somebody else. It's pretty ugly, and what I found interesting was, because that to me is what scares me, is the process, not the content. I think let them argue it out, let them scream it out, let them argue it out, let them lie and tell the truth and argue it out, all in public. That doesn't concern me, then we'll find out truth. But the process of shutting someone down,
I don't
really,
think they even want truth, they just want it.
I don't think either side wants truth.
They just want dictates.
Yeah, and then it occurred to me though, that on the Republican side, for better or for worse, there is the number 10. Which is the number of, potentially, of 10 people who can change the world. And on the Democratic side, there's the number of 13, which is the number of love potential. And what beautiful, and forget about the content, the possibility of making a process between these 23 people could be beautiful. Could really find truth, to whatever level.
But they don't want truth.
And, well, but the process, that's what really concerned me, but I found it interesting that two numbers that are very big in Judaism, especially 10. And another reason 10 is important is because of this, okay? Avram argues 10 people will save the world, can save the world. The other piece is, we are allowed to argue with God. This is very, very important, okay? We're going to study a passage later on this year in the Talmud, in Bava Metzia 15, where the rabbis are arguing, and one rabbi is saying one thing, and all the other rabbis are saying something against him. And the one rabbi who's saying, you know, if I'm right, let that tree prove it. And the tree gets up and moves 50 yards. And the rabbis say, we could care less about a tree. He says, if I'm right, let the stream prove it. And the stream runs backwards. And they say, we could care less about a stream. He says, if I'm right, let the house of the walls of this house start to fall. They do. And the rabbis say, get out, stand of this discussion. And he says, if I'm right, let God prove it. And they all hear a Barclay, a voice of heaven. And the Barclay says, you know, this heavenly voice says, why are you arguing with him every other day? He's right in every place. And the rabbis go, Lo bashamayim, it's not in heaven, stay out of it. Okay? And if you teach that to, which I did for many years, if you teach that to Catholic students, and you ask them, well, what happens after this, do you think? They'll all say, well, God strikes them dead with lightning, right? It's like, no. In our teachings, Rabbi meets Elijah. He says, what did God do when this happened? And he says, God smiled and laughed and said, my children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. We see this first here. Now you're going to see patterns as we study. And these, as we go through all of this stuff. And as we go through the patterns, you're going to see a pattern recapitulating itself. Over and over and over. And one of these patterns is, we are not meant to just be blind servants to God. We are meant, as Jews, we are meant to wrestle with God. The word Yisrael means he who wrestles with God. We are meant to wrestle. Now, if you looked at wrestling through a window, and you saw two guys wrestling, doing Greco-Roman wrestling, you didn't know they were wrestling, you might think they were doing something else. Because it's very intimate, right? We are meant to be that intimate with God. And Abraham demonstrates it right here as he argues for Sodom. It says everything about who he is in those few verses. He is a man who stands for what is right and righteous and will argue against anybody, including God, to make sure what's right is done. This is a central point in what does it mean to be a Jew. And we'll see it in teachings throughout the next couple of thousand years. Constantly, we are obligated to wrestle, even with God. Again, when I taught Loyola, the other rabbi there, Rabbi Arthur Schaefer, who's the ethics chair of the business schools, dear friend, he's one of the witnesses on my ketubah. Amazing, amazing man. And the priests would look at Arthur and I, and we'd go at it in love. But with an example, I would say, look, Arthur, we're having a Shabbat dinner. They're over 18. In Judaism, if you're over 13, you can drink wine. We're serving wine. He'd say, Michael, that's crazy. We can't serve wine to these minors. I said, wait, they can serve wine in the Mass. Why can't we? We'd go back and forth, right? In love. I mean, we're trying to find the right answers. We encouraged that dialogue. We passionately encouraged the dialogue, right? Arthur, we're doing a Passover Seder. We should do this. He's like, Michael, that's too observant. No, we should do this. We might as well show them when it's right. And we go back and forth, okay? The priests would look at us like we must hate each other, when the exact opposite is true. It's out of love and respect. I won't passionately debate with someone about something if I don't respect them. If I don't care about what we're talking about, if I don't love them, why am I going to get into it?
You don't care what they think.
That's why I was so disturbed by the hearings. Because that passionate wrestling is not existent. Let them fight it out. Let them scream at each other, let them yell at each other, let them argue with each other, let them call each other liars, let them call each other heroes, let them really try and... But you don't have a dialogue. What's going on in the hearing isn't a dialogue so far. It's two alternating monologues. That's why the process so disturbed me. Because someone can look and say the three witnesses are so clearly honest, and someone can look and say the three witnesses are so clearly liars. And I make it a point to read 3 different news services, okay, so that I get the far left, the far right, and the middle, so that I can see what the different sides are saying, and it's really interesting.
MSNBC, CNN. and Fox.
Oh, no, that's not.
Well, it's the only one that came to mind.
But you were close. Breitbart.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you have to brush your teeth
Absolutely.
afterwards, right?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Joel Pollak's a genius.
Perhaps.
Joel Pollak. And
But
John Nolte is the best film reviewer I've ever heard. So on that side, and on this side, either MSNBC or CNN.
Oh,
and,
Rachel.
Huh?
Rockwell.
And in the middle, I actually, you're gonna laugh, is Drudge.
That's the middle?
Do you know, but you know why I say that?
Yeah, but you're talking the last 3 months he's the middle. He's
Last year.
okay. Well,
last year.
He's changed.
Because he doesn't, they don't write anything of their own. They just pirate from everybody else.
No, that's true.
So I end up, as a result, I'm reading the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and he's just an outlet. He doesn't have any of his own stuff. He doesn't create it. I don't think he creates any of his own material. So I want to have the dialogue. That's who we are as Jews. And to not have that dialogue, to not wrestle with each other and with God, is antithetical to Judaism.
Well, some of us, and I'll admit, that's what I'm feeling right now. We're guilty of sentimentalizing an individual rather than the message, because so many of us, especially in Southern California perhaps, have put Adam Schiff on a bit of a pedestal.
I do not.
Clearly.
I do not.
But it's just matching those two up is, giving you a suggestion for me.
That's why I decided to get this week.
Or a Tums.
So, it's, but the point is that Judaism is about wrestling. Now, we're going to see this pattern. The rest of the study in Judaism, the rest of your life, you will see this throughout everything in Judaism. That's why it's so important. And this is where we really start to see it. The reason I'm learning all this, we're going to spend more time in the early parts of the Bible than on anything else, because maybe we'll spend a lot of time on Talmud too. But it's because this is where you see patterns that will consistently be repeated in one version or another. A different octave of the same existing thing. Okay, so remember, Sarah's barren, right? Can't have a child. God blesses with a child. Her transcendent moment, the big moment in her life, is she has a child. When she was told she couldn't. And there was a beautiful sculpture I saw once. It was displayed at what was Brandeis camp. It was this very old 90-year-old woman. This old grandma naked. Okay? Everything's saggy. Nursing a baby. Exquisite. It's exquisite. It was Sarah and Isaac. And it was just, I can't even relay how beautiful it was. This sculptor had just really captured the love of this being for her child, and what a miracle it was that this being had this being. It was just beautiful. Really was. All right, so Sodom ultimately is destroyed because of not having hospitality, and Sarah has her baby, Isaac, and Isaac has on chapter 21, and because they laughed, Isaac, is the name, and Abraham circumcises Isaac. And we have this line in chapter 21, verse 9. This is typically read, this part of going on Rosh Hashanah every year. Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. So she said to Abraham, drive out this slave woman with her son, for the son of that slave woman shall not inherit with my son, with Isaac. Okay. What does mocking mean? There is a horrible, I think horrible, interpretation of this, that Ishmael was being sexually abusive to Isaac, which I think is just anti-Muslim rhetoric that came about, at a time that they wanted to do that. In fact, I think this commentary we might even mention it. So that's corrupting. There's another midrash, however, that's very beautiful. That the two boys, not boys, but the two sons, are arguing who loves God more? And Isaac says, I love God so much I gave him my foreskin. Ishmael says, no big deal. You did it when you were 8 days old. I did it a lot older. And you don't love God so much. And that was the mocking. I like that a lot better, personally. But the reaction,
It's painful just to hear.
Who's the bravest person? The person that eat the first egg, or the person that drink the milk the first time?
exactly, yeah. Who thought of that idea? So, Sarah says, go on.
Was Sarah driving away the slave woman? That kind of is the opposite of hospitality.
Yes, it is.
I'm sure
And whose idea was to have the slave woman have the baby in the first place?
Well, that was a little bit too much hospitality.
Are you saying we're striking a balance here?
Maybe she was just equalizing.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but take a look at something else in this stuff. She makes this comment. And her comment is, again, we're looking at chapter 21, verse 10. Drug out the slave woman with her son. For the son of that slave woman shall not inherit with my son, with Isaac. What's the problem with that sentence? Well, think. What's the problem with the sentence?
They're both Abraham's son.
They're both Abraham's son. What's the other problem that she's saying that just is a point-blank fallacy? Can Ishmael inherit?
Why not?
It's not his wife's son. He doesn't inherit anyhow. He's the slave woman's son. He's the mistress's son, the concubine's son.
Okay.
Law is law.
So you only inherit from the mother's?
No. You inherit because it's his wife.
Just not up on the ancient
Oh,
Aramaic.
you know what's I mean, you got to think about this. So it's not true that on a practical level, Ishmael cannot take Isaac's inheritance. Okay?
If he had no other offspring?
Then he
Yeah.
could, but he does have another offspring.
Okay, so that's where that,
That's where those laws come
it
from.
changed, that's when it changed.
Sure,
okay.
but does their sentence make sense on its face? So why does Sarah want Ishmael gone?
She doesn't want anyone but her son.
Go on. Why does Sarah want Ishmael gone?
She doesn't want anyone but her son to inherit.
It's not about inheritance because we know that someone would inherit anyhow. She's saying that, but that's not what's going on.
She doesn't want
Simple word. It begins with a J.
affection.
Was it
She's
jealousy?
jealous?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm looking for multiple reasons here. I suppose she could be jealous, but
Well, let's think of some. Abraham's got a son. Do you think he loves Ishmael?
why? Here's the thing: if he loved Ishmael first, and then why would he stop loving his first son?
He wouldn't.
Okay.
Absolutely. So he loves Ishmael.
Yes.
Think he loves the mother?
Not
Thinks he has warm feelings for her?
I'm guessing no.
I-
Other than
She gave
she
him
gave
the son,
him the son.
he has to.
Okay. Well, there's a
That-
great. After Sarah dies, Abraham remarries. He
Okay.
remarries a woman named Keturah. And Midrash says Keturah is Hagar.
Okay. What's the? Okay.
All right.
It tells us that Hagar has had a name change.
But no, it tells us that he married her and had more children with her.
Okay.
So he obviously has feelings for her, right?
By then, certainly.
Okay. Safe assumption he has some feelings now, and he certainly has feelings for his son. If you take her out of the equation, think he has feelings for Ishmael? And Sarah's jealous? You're nodding. There's a woman
She's
nodding.
probably jealous for Isaac's sake too.
Oh,
I
I
think that
know.
the wording of the sentence is kind of a little bit, it says, drive out this slave woman and her son.
In the Hebrew, they're two together.
Oh, well then,
I mean, it's different words, but it's
Okay.
two together.
No,
So the understanding is that she's jealous.
yeah,
Okay.
but I don't know if I would have gone that far back. I didn't know that he married her later. I didn't know a lot.
That's an interesting take, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Keturah means the spicy one.
Okay.
That's her name?
She wasn't 100, so.
She changes her name to the spicy one
Yeah,
and they
I would
remarry.
mention that anything under 100 would probably be spicy.
In comparison. So,
That's the
What-
first
but here's the
thing that's,
question. so Abraham argues for what's right.
number.
It's relative. I'm sorry, I just thought of a really bad joke. Abraham argues for what's right. What should he say to Sarah?
Forget it, they're both my sons. You know,
He's not going to inherit, but he is my son. I love him. I have enough love in my heart for both my children.
There you
cutting
go.
off one of my arms.
Right? That would be the right thing to say, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What's he say? She says, now this is a guy who argued with God for people he did not know. But his wife comes to him and says, send your child Ishmael out, and while you're at it, why don't you just cut off your testicles and give them to me on a plate too. And that's really what she's saying. Just do what I say. What should he say?
Well, we know
What does he say?
that what God tells Abraham.
No, what does he say? First of all, we agree that he should say no, right? Did everyone agree on that?
Yes.
What does he say? Please read
11.
on verse 11.
The matter distressed Abraham greatly, for it concerned a son of his. And then, but God said to Abraham,
Go on, keep going.
do not be distressed over the boy or your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you, we do as she says, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him, too, for he is your seed. Boy, if I was Sarah, I'd be really fearful right now.
Why?
Well, it just seems like if she, and I haven't thought of this, though the story's familiar to me from childhood on, but Sarah inviting Hagar, and the result being a son, and then going back and saying, I've had a son, you can get rid of her and him, continuing on by saying, making the demands to her husband, and then God's reply, I just, Sarah, you really got it wrong.
How about that? Who else has it wrong?
Seems like God has it wrong.
No, Abraham.
Abraham.
Because of his hesitancy?
What should he have said?
Well, as you said, he should
I said no.
love both. And
You got nothing to worry about, Sarah. You're fine. Your son's fine. I got enough love for both my sons. Ishmael's not taking any of your inheritance. I love you. You're my wife. I love you now. I loved you then. I will always love you. That would have created a whole different dynamic, wouldn't it? Instead, he goes to God. Now, does God, let's look at a parent. How many of your parents? Okay. Do you ever give your children opportunities to do good or maybe not do so good? You ever say, hey, you want to do that? You go right ahead. You know what's right. Okay, you want to eat 10 cupcakes. You know, because we've taught you, eating 10 cupcakes, and that's all you're having for dinner, isn't going to be so good. You want to do it? Go have your 10 cupcakes. Anyone ever do that to their kids?
yeah, not with cupcakes, but
Yeah.
Okay. Why did you do that?
To learn the hard way.
To learn the hard way. And what were you trying to see? You were testing them, weren't you? Because you weren't sure if they have the emotional, psychological maturity to say, I don't want the 10 cupcakes, or whatever your example may have been, right?
but the end game was that you were willing to take a risk because they're going to need to get to that place anyway.
Right.
They have to learn
That's
for
it.
themselves.
It worked, by the way.
I'll remember that. So, is God saying do whatever you tell her because he thinks that Sarah's right? Or is he saying, fine, go have the cupcakes. You want to do what Sarah tells you? You go listen to whatever she says. I'm still going to take care of Ishmael. You go do whatever you want to do. What if it's all said in sarcasm? What if it's all him giving enough rope to Abraham to hang himself? What if he's giving the opportunity to Abraham to say, okay, look, you do what you want to do. I can take care of Ishmael one way or the other, but you do what you want to do.
Well, I'm not reading that he's saying go do what you want to do, though. I'm hearing him saying
Listen to Sarah's
basically,
voice.
happy wife, happy life.
Eat the cupcakes. Should Abraham have even gone to God to ask?
No.
No, he should have known the answer.
So, your child comes up to you. I'm going to keep using cupcakes as the example because I just had a sweet cake. Your child comes up to you and says, Daddy, can I have, there's this big basket of leftover Halloween candy. I haven't had anything to eat today. Can I just have for my breakfast, lunch, and dinner 20 candy bars? Now, first of all, should the kid ask you? Does the kid know up front that this is a bad idea? Yes. So the kid comes and asks you, what do you say?
Yeah, you're crazy. No.
Okay, that's one answer. What also might you say?
I would say no.
Or you might say, knock yourself out, right?
Well, I wouldn't get to knock yourself out until they continue to push it. They say, you think it's a good idea? Go ahead and you'll find out.
There you go. If you think so, so you're going to give them that space. It's the
But-
same thing. Same
Yeah,
thing.
that's the second answer. The first answer is no.
But what if it's something that they absolutely know they shouldn't do? No question, they absolutely know they shouldn't do.
That's-
And they've demonstrated to you in the past that they know better.
Then the second choice would be to say, okay, if you think you know better,
Has Abraham demonstrated repeatedly that he knows better? That he's going to argue for what's right? So now he's suddenly going to God. What's he really going to God for? Permission.
Would he have known that, I don't know, how many situations are there to know what's right and what's wrong?
Oh, I think it's a pretty clear one. Don't kill your son. I think that's a good.
Oh, is he saying kill the son?
no.
He's
Let's
sending him
just
out.
go
He's,
back to-
wait. She says send him away into the wilderness. I mean,
Oh.
so we don't know what's going to happen to the
Didn't
son.
interpret
or
it that way,
anything.
okay.
Yeah, we don't know. And ultimately, she does go, and she's taken care of by God. And from Ishmael come all of the heir of the people. Okay.
Because she's of Egyptian descent.
So all Arabs trace their roots. All Muslims trace their root back to Ishmael. Like we trace back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They trace back to Abraham and Ishmael.
We're all cousins.
Uh-huh.
So
They
is that
basically
where
want
the
to kill us
split
if they-
came
You
from?
got it. Bingo. It's finally someone got it.
You know, I've been looking for that answer. My son and I have been debating that for years.
I missed that. Can you say it again, please?
Say it again, Liz.
What did I say?
You said.
That's where the split came from.
Ishmael.
That's why they hate us. We sent him out.
That's a pretty darn good reason, isn't it?
Wow.
That's a pretty darn good
That's one
reason.
of those moments that I have been trying to figure out for so long. Where did it come from?
This is the root.
There's the hate.
Okay, this is the root. I mean, there's other things too, but this is the first time that instead of being cousins, we become cousins.
Our God sent him away.
Okay, it's the same God, but instead of being cousins who are together, we become cousins. That way, we can, in this case, actually half brothers who do this. So there is no upside to him sending Ishmael out. God knows this. God knows everything, right? So, but Abraham just acted in a way that is contradictory to the way he normally acts, didn't he?
Well, it certainly wasn't hospitable.
It wasn't hospitable, it wasn't arguing for what's righteous, it wasn't arguing for what's right. Right? It was contradictory to the way he is. This is a guy who argued with his father.
Yeah.
This is a guy who argues with God. This is a guy who's constantly trying to be hospitable, do what's right, treat righteously. And all of a sudden, to make his life easier, he's going, God, give me the permission to listen to her
Yeah,
voice.
because it certainly seems as if his intelligence, his innate intelligence is dimming a bit. If he's arguing and debating successfully as a young man, and then after a lifetime of experience,
Maybe he's got some
Well-
dementia and senility
Just
creeping in.
reasons
He's
he
over
doesn't.
100 here.
So what happens here is that he changes how he behaves, doesn't he? And so, God gives him the rope. You know better than to ask me. You want to ask me? Fine, do whatever she tells you. And so he does, and throws out Hagar and Ishmael, and then Ishmael is they're safe. If you look at the verse, if we look, they're so Abraham awoke early in the morning, took bread and a skin of water, gave them to Hagar, he placed them on her shoulder along with the boy, and sent her off. She departed, she strayed in the desert of Beersheba. When the water of the skin was consumed, she cast off the boy beneath one of the trees. She went and sat herself down at a distance, some bow shots away, for she said, "Let me not see the death of my child." And she sat at a distance, lifted her voice, and wept. God heard the cry of the youth, and an angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heeded the cry of the youth in his present state." This is an incredibly important term. There's a midrash that the angels at this moment go to God and says, "What are you doing? From Ishmael will come people who will constantly be at war with your chosen people." Angels say this. And God says, "I listen to someone in their present state. I listen to someone where they are, not where they will be. Because they have free will. So I listen to them in the present state. There's a child crying out." I guess the theological or the philosophical question would be, you're back in whatever year, and there's a baby crying who's about to die, and you know the baby's Adolf Hitler. Do you save the baby or not? You know the baby will grow to be Adolf Hitler. Do you save the baby?
You know that
Hindsight's
it will become
20/20.
that.
Huh?
You know that that's the outcome.
You know this baby will
You
be
can't
Hitler.
change the outcome by
You
saying
know the
it.
baby will be Hitler. He will make the choices and will become Hitler. Do you save the baby?
I
God does. We judge someone where they are in the present state.
So
Not.
Matt, let's expand on that a little bit in the sense that, so someone's been bad most of their life and now they've repented and they're behaving good.
Oh,
God
prodigal
looks at
son,
them now and treats them according to the way they are now. And
Correct.
going further than that, let's use the Hitler example. Post-World War II, Hitler survived, and he's seen, oh my God, look what I've done, and he repents. He shouldn't, God would look at him,
Okay, no, you just took it into two different places. Because there's the place of where are you presently, but have you made atonement for the sins you did? If you're going from bad to good. And the answer is, if someone has made atonement, if they have repented, if they have made tshuva, we say that the Baal Tshuva, the master of return of redemption, stands where not even the perfect tzaddik can stand. It is even more holy to be someone who knew this and then came. And later on, again, we're going to study in Talmud about Reish Lakish and Yochanan. And Reish Lakish was the king of the high women that totally repented. And years later, his brother-in-law and best friend, Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan, brings up his past. And as a result, it's just a horrible tragedy. A horrible tragedy. Reish Lakish dies, Yochanan dies, goes crazy and dies. You judge someone where they are. Now, if they've got things they got to make tshuva for, that's part of the judgment. You know, how do you make the tshuva for 6 million? Right? And there are some things you can't make tshuva for in this world. But we judge someone where they are now. It means that just because past history, that someone in the past was good or not good, does not mean that we judge them based on that now. Okay, does that make sense? This is, again, a big piece in Judaism that we're going to see again recapitulated. Judge where it is now. Okay? I'll give you, I've said this before. The person that I am not angry at Salih or Omar. They're just anti-Semites. Okay, they are who they are. I'm not disappointed and angry or disappointed in Salih and Omar. They need to be fought. I am hugely disappointed in a man that I've respected his entire political career, which is Chuck Schumer. Because he knows better. Now, for all the good that I think he's done, right now, he has not spoken out and acted against those anti-Semites. Does that make sense?
yeah. Where does Judaism stand on capital punishment?
We have capital punishment.
So,
But the question becomes, what are the requirements for it? We're going to get to it.
okay.
But the simplicity of the simple explanation of the law and capital punishment is you have to, the person has to, there have to be two witnesses, you have to know, if I remember this right. You have to, they had, the person who was killing had to know in advance they were about to kill someone. And they had to be in the right mind in doing it. This was conscious. Wait, you're not even,
Well, I just can't put myself, I'm sorry, it's just a horrible
yeah, but how
situation.
how would that ever happen? Look at the circumstances that are set up.
I just can't imagine having somebody have to kill somebody else, and does that just not put them in the same position?
No, you're not here. Let me say, you're only gonna do it easy, I'll do the suicide. The suicide is put in the corner of the cemetery, okay? But the rabbis only judge someone as a suicide if they were good, in good mind and spirit when they killed themselves, and when they were conscious of what they were doing. By definition, if someone killed themselves, they are either not conscious of what they're doing or they're not of good mind and spirit, right?
Right.
Which means on a practical level, the religion has made a statement of how it feels about suicide. But does it ever really happen?
The only scenario I could see is maybe like shortening the life based on knowing what's coming, life assistance.
Then it's not, then it's
And the
not in
right
good mind.
decision.
Then they're not in good mind and spirit because they've already gotten to the place of depression where they've given up on life,
Because I'm just,
right? So in other words, same with capital punishment. But we judge someone where they are, okay? That's a really big piece, we're gonna see it again and again. A lot of stuff in these early chapters, we're gonna see these processes over and over in Judaism. This is the first introductions of some of that.
That's
That's
why I
what's
went to
going
the
on.
capital punishment, because you're on death row for 10, 20 years sometimes before they're killed. If the person repents and does whatever and,
Murder is something you cannot make shuvah for. That wouldn't be the reason not to have capital punishment.
alright.
The reason not to have capital punishment is because what if you're wrong?
No,
Can't.
I agree with that.
You can't make shuvah for, if it's a simple balance, right? The more you restrict capital punishment, the less mistakes you're gonna make that can't be corrected. The more you permit it, the more mistakes you're gonna make that can't be corrected. So, but this is about judging in the moment, in the present, okay? So this is typically the part that's on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. And the second part starts, and this is really important. So this is, you all get this piece about how can you all see how maybe Abraham should not have listened to Sarah, or certainly not that way, and that maybe God is setting Abraham up. This is very different behavior for Abraham, isn't it? Right? It's very different behavior.
Well, it's not a match for,
Who he's been.
correct.
So now the question comes, if you're not sure, so you've been a teacher for many years, and when do you give a test? And why do you give a test?
Well, if you want to assess progress
Okay.
or mastery, or you want to assess prior knowledge,
When you want to assess where someone stands.
yeah, you figure out, where they're beginning or where they're ending.
Okay, so a test is only given if you know that someone knows their multiplication tables through 12 times 12. And you're very clear, and they've done all the testing on that, and they've shown that to you over and over. Are you going to test them on it again?
That's not likely. It might be in the context of something else,
But-
perhaps.
But it's not, right?
Yeah.
We test when we don't know. When we don't know with what we're testing, where they really stand.
Mhm.
That's a fair statement as a teacher?
Well, that is good teaching. It's not necessarily good practice.
But we're talking about good teaching, and we can all accept God is a better teacher
And
than
I'm giving you a
us.
bad yes.
That's okay. Trust me, it's not the first time going through the book of Genesis and getting a tough time. So, now we have chapter 22. Someone please read chapter 22. So we only read the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Now remember what just happened, right? What just happened? Abraham throws out Hagar and Ishmael
Yeah.
after being told by Sarah, you should. Okay? Now, please someone read 22:1.
And it happened after these things.
What things?
Throwing out,
Go on, good.
that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham,
Wait, why is he testing Abraham?
because he's not sure where he's at now, because
Because-
he flip-flopped.
Okay, go on.
And he replied, here I am.
Hineni, that phrase we said last time.
And he said, please take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. Bring him up there as an offering upon one of the mountains which I shall tell you.
Okay. First of all, let's just get together the basic question. What should Abraham say to God?
Oh,
Nope.
no.
Okay. What's the next line? What is he going to do?
So Abraham woke up early in the morning, and he saddled his donkey. He took his 2 young men with him and Isaac, his son. He split the wood for the offering and stood up and went to the place of which God had spoken.
Okay, so when he goes up, and we've heard this story, right? He goes up and he almost sacrifices Isaac. Gets to the point where the angel doesn't even have to say, he has to say Abraham twice, not just once. Must say Abraham, Abraham, and then he stops and he doesn't kill his son, right? And this is often taught as, clearly it's a test, it says that it's a test, that this is the test of Abraham, and in this test, Abraham is a success. No, that is going on, he's not. Right? That he's a success. Now, first of all, understand why it is often taught that Abraham is a success, is that this model of a father being willing to sacrifice his son is then used as a model later on for in the Christian concept of God sacrificing Isaac. Okay? Just that's so, because they draw parallels and they say this is a passing test. But what if we read it differently? What if we don't read it the way it says? What if we read it and there's parenthetical statements that are in the tone? And so God, after these things, where Abraham did what he knew was not right, and sent his son out and Hagar out, for God knows what, literally. God tested Abraham, and he said, Abraham, and Abraham said, here I am. And God said, I want you to take your son, parentheses. I say son because clearly you never thought of Ishmael as your son. Your only son, parentheses. How would you view it? You only viewed him as a slave or something. The one you love, parentheses, because clearly you never loved Ishmael. Isaac by name, and I want you to take him to do this. What if all that's going on there is God's again saying, look, I'm going to test you. Are you going to be who you've always been, or are you going to be who you just became with this issue of Hagar being sent out and all that? And as a result of that, God is waiting for Abraham to say no, just like he did for Sodom. But God, he doesn't do that. Abraham doesn't do that. Instead, he sneaks out early in the morning, and he goes up to this mountain, and he gets so lost in a myopic vision, like a fundamentalist, that he is about to kill Isaac before he is stopped. And then, in fact, he doesn't pass the test. He failed the test. That's a big statement, isn't it? Better be able to back it up with text. In this interpretation of him being a failure of the test, the text that backs it up is, number one, after the experience of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, God never speaks with Abraham in the Torah again. Never. Moses is like, eh.
How did I miss all this all these years?
One of my favorite lines. Not my fault. I can't be blamed for what people didn't teach. God never speaks. What else happens? Isaac goes blind because Isaac is 47 years old when this happens. 37 or 47, I forget. 37. 37.
So,
He's a grown man. He knows what's going on. How do we know his age? Because later on, as we see in chapter 23, Sarah's lifetime was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. She gave birth at 90. He's 37 years old. And the Midrash teaches that she wakes up, realizes her husband has snuck off with her son. They've snuck off together. And with a woman's foresight or vision, she sees Abraham about to kill her son, and she has a heart attack and dies. She dies.
so she doesn't even know that he doesn't.
I assume she knows
That he didn't.
eventually, but I
When
mean,
she died, how does she
I
know?
assume she knows somehow. Right? So God never speaks to Abraham again. Isaac goes blind because he's on this mountain. He doesn't believe this is going to, and he has faith in God. That's why it's called the binding of Isaac, this story, not the binding of Abraham. It's the binding of Isaac. Because Isaac is the one who binds to God. Isaac is this holy, holy being that people ignore. He's the only one of the three patriarchs who never leaves Israel, never leaves Canaan. He didn't go to Egypt. He never leaves Canaan. And when he sees his father about to kill him, he goes and he has trauma blindness. How do we know Isaac becomes blind? Because later on, when he's got these two twins, Jacob and Esau, Jacob and Rebekah fool him into thinking that Jacob is Esau. We're studying that with wedding. So we know Isaac goes blind. We know Sarah dies. We know that Abraham, God never speaks to Abraham in the text again. Does that sound like a successful test? Or does that sound like remedial?
No do-overs.
This is one that you know, there are places where there are no do-overs, exactly. You've gotten to a place and there's, you showed me, so which is more likely? That God is saying, and all interpretations are good, they're all based in Torah, right? Well, but they're all valid. Say that Abraham succeeded is a perfectly valid interpretation. I don't agree with it, but it's a perfectly valid interpretation.
So one could say that God's test blinded Isaac too.
One could absolutely say, one could say that God really was saying, you know, you should listen to Sarah, and I really do want you to kill your son. I want to see how far you'll go, and I know I'm going to stop you, but I want to see how far you're going to go. That's a fully legitimate interpretation. In fact, the interpretation you will hear in the majority of Bible teachings around the world. Remember, most of them are Christian. But doesn't it make more sense, at least it does to me, that God is saying, you know you shouldn't be asking about throwing out Ishmael. Fine, you do whatever she tells you. Oh, wow. Abraham, you really changed who you are. I think I need to test you. So I'm going to ask you if you're going to take and kill your other son now. How far are you going to go on with this? Wow, I can't believe this. Fine, Abraham, stop. Abraham! He stops. Well, to me that's much, and the results. If you pass the test, why does God never speak to Abraham again? If he failed the test, it makes sense, doesn't it? You're deeply in study.
No, I'm trying to figure out, you know, if you learned this more than 50 years ago, how did you miss it and never pick up on it
That's what I
again?
just said. How does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, think about it.
It happens because
We've been misled.
And we listen to it every year.
Well, we were children.
Now, we're not now, and you hear it every year.
Yeah. We did hear it this yeah.
second day reading.
You never thought about it.
Unfortunately, God's often do his first day reading because
You know, but you mentioned that this year too.
But you know, I think there's so many ways to look at this piece of text. I think you can look at it from Abraham's view, Isaac's view,
Sometimes it's better to
Sarah's
sit
view,
back
or
and
God's
listen
view.
to hear more.
I think you can look at it from any of those different pieces, any of those different views. But to me, you know, and for me, I can't worship a God that's willing to sacrifice children. I can't go there. That's sort of I can imagine having the faith of saying, fine, I'll cut off my foreskin with a dull rock. I know anesthesia. I can imagine that. I cannot imagine worshiping a deity that encourages child. And by the way, anywhere else in the Bible, does God want children killed?
Well, not with David, remember, or wisdom, no, it's Solomon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He don't want children killed. He does everything to stop it.
That's right. So, we have a rule now.
We don't kill children. And in fact, there's lots of things where we're saying not to be like the people of Moloch who do. So, does it make more sense that God wants this? And even if you say, okay, God knew he's going to stop Abraham, does he really want, as the head of his tribe, his chosen people, quote unquote, the people that are going to follow him, does he really want someone who's willing to sacrifice his child?
Well, more importantly, Abraham didn't know.
That's the point, and Abraham was willing to sacrifice him.
I always understood that was Abraham was willing to do what God told him to do.
But we already learned it?
I don't know.
Who's Abraham?
I think in the long term, this is better.
I like it better.
If nothing else, you know, sleep better tonight.
And we've already learned who Abraham is. Yes, Abraham is, this is part of the issue of being, wrestling with God. Sometimes you're pushing, sometimes you're working in the same movement. But it's intimate. Abraham, we know, argues for Lot, for Sodom.
Sure, the message isn't that seniors shouldn't be having children. Is that senile?
You should write an article on that. Torah says IVF should not be allowed if you're over this age.
I wanna know.
I'm not sure how I feel about that, however.
Why don't women have children now if they're hospitable at older
Women
ages?
do have
Well,
children.
there was that one physician who was 64 in
China.
Shanghai.
Yeah.
And women do have children at ages that never people didn't think they would. And then we have all sorts of techniques, and we have all sorts of wonderful things, and we have a lot of children who need adoption too, who are not able to be adopted.
First thing I would do if that companion came to my door, so I could afford them.
It's very, I mean, if your friend Sohel, it's a treasure, Sohel, it took him 2 years to finally get approved to be able to have from a mother for a newborn baby. Who they had. She was born on Rosh Hashanah.
Oh.
They brought her down, they were there, but that's why I was in a Surah, since he was up in Seattle, getting their baby. But they went through a real journey.
Mhm.
They would have a large party, once we get to the child's 3 months old, so that she's, that they're really comfortable with her health, but then they'll have a large baby naming party. Everyone in the community will be invited to. And it's Persian, so probably everyone in our community and half of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So, but this is an important piece. Do you guys see this now, why it's so powerful?
Yeah.
Okay? It kind of transforms how you think of Abraham and God and Isaac, and what is our job to be blindly subservient? No. It is our job to do what we know is wrong. God's already given us the guidelines. So why are we asking him, should I throw out my son? God forbid, right? It tells a lot about who we are, this one portion, or these two portions. And remember, what's the first thing that God says to Abraham in the first place? He's still Abram at that point.
Mhm.
Go into, by, for yourself, away from what you know, to a place I will show you. And now he's willing to surrender all that up, isn't he?
But is he showing them, yeah, send Ishmael out, and is he showing them, take
No, I
your
think
son
he's
to
shown-
be,
I think he's shown them very clearly, don't do that. He's already learned that lesson. You wouldn't treat you for a kid near their multiplication tables. You're not gonna be testing them on
Well,
the basic multiplication when they're in calculus.
and as parents, we don't look into the future, and the children who we're gifted with, wherever they came from, circumstances change, we don't stop loving them. Oh, I'm sorry, that's for a little model on, but, so it is kind of it's rather difficult to imagine unloving your eldest child.
There are moments.
And it is,
Not impossible, but it's difficult.
and it's even scarier to think that you're going to love them, and youngest or oldest, oldest or youngest, you're going to love them, and you're going to kill them because of what you're being told. That's terrifying. And so we learn here so beautifully in these portions, in these texts, in this part of the text, about how we learn some very, very, and I always spend a lot of time on just two portions of the Torah, but that's okay. We learn so much about what Jews are and what Judaism is. We are to meditate, we are to go into ourselves, we are to do what is right, how important 10 people are, how we judge someone in their present state, how God does test us, how we need to stand up for what is right, how our relationship with God is not subservient in that way, blind obedience.
Well, but we extend it
We extend
beyond
it,
individual relationships. We, more and more as we go along in time, we think that our biggest job after parenting well is conservatorship of the earth. So
It's in everything that we do.
and that's not part of other philosophies of life or spirituality.
We see so much in here that becomes the foundational points that become manifest in ecology. What other culture has Tu B'Shvat, a holiday for trees?
One of my favorites.
Right? What other culture? Our commitments to freedom, our commitments to doing what is right, our commitments to love. We don't just blindly surrender. We don't just do that. And so we're the people who, in the Holocaust, the story is that they put, the rabbis in Auschwitz put God on trial. That he broke the covenant. And they had defending army, defending attorney, and prosecuting attorney, and the judges, the rabbis. And they ultimately decided God broke the covenant. And then you know what they did? Their morning blessings.
Mm-hmm.
We are okay holding disparate realities. This is important. Judaism is not about here is the answer. It is here about here are answers. And we see this through these two portions, these two readings that these readings we've been doing. That's why it's worth spending so much time on them. Because these are points that we're going to see over and over and over again in Bible, in Talmud, in history, in how we deal with things. There is a book that Stan Levine, I've loaned it to him, so Stan's got my copy of it, but there is a wonderful book by Rabbi Shochet about this. There was a case in the Middle Ages, some point, I forget what year, that in some town in Europe, a man is taken the host from the wafer from the Catholic Church.
Oh,
He's stolen it, and
you're gonna tell that story.
and so the whole issue is the Catholic soldier one says, okay, well, you're either going to give him or we're going to kill the people. What do we do? And it's a very, very powerful story. It's not a horrible story. It ends up working out.
No, I was thinking of the other one, the one that began
In Norwich?
in Norwich.
Oh no, that's different. That's just a horrible story. No, this is but this is, and so they send a question to the great rabbi of the time and say, what do we do? And you don't just give an answer, you have to back it up with text, and what do you do? But these kind of basic moral teachings, these values, refined in the early parts. That's why you have to spend so much time in the early parts of the Torah. The Torah specifically, some of the first 4 books. Deuteronomy is a lot of recapitulation, but we will find it over and over. We will find another character later on in the Bible who is doing what he knows is wrong, and the exact same language that we read here about Abraham sneaking out early in the morning with his 2 donkeys and with the donkey and the young boys, exact same language is used for this guy later on. Because he knew what he was doing was wrong, so he sneaks out. So,
You know what you're talking about.
Balaam and Balak,
Um,
he sneaks out.
No, but it's, and I appreciate this because it's a basic of, as a teacher in a student relationship, you want to build a foundation for comprehension so that everyone has a very concrete example to refer to. Because so much of our remembering, comprehending, applying, whether Abraham or anything else, you need something that's kind of universally understood, like this is the beginning, or this is the foundation.
This is God's
or-
name. This is.
Exactly.
That's why we spent so much time last time on the 4-letter name of God, because we're going to see that coming in so many different ways.
I
And
could
so
spend
many
a month just on this and not get anywhere near.
Good luck spending less, I'm learning.
We spend a lifetime on it.
But I
Everything-
never
we
understand.
study it every week, every year. We study it for that week, every year.
But the points you're bringing out in the way of thinking is so different than anything I ever would have thought.
But they are, look, I put out some commentaries. Commentary by Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, by Rashi, by Barclay. This is Rashi's commentary on the book of Genesis. It's bigger than the book of Genesis, with tiny print.
I couldn't read it.
okay?
Well,
Well, you know that's my conspiracy theory. You heard me say that, you've heard me say, this is my conspiracy theory.
yeah, that's Rashi?
No, I have one conspiracy theory, I think we're all entitled to have one. My conspiracy theory is that they publish these books that have Hebrew and have English back and forth, so that, and they're a little tiny font, so that you gotta go like this, and you need glasses. So as a rabbi, you look wiser. I am convinced this is a conspiracy
It's
theory.
the ophthalmologists of America.
It is
or-
in conjunction with the publishers and yes, but so each of these people have different commentaries, and they all have, and it's not that one is right or one is wrong, they're all right. Elu ve'elu, these words and these words are all words of Torah. And we side, you know, I present the commentators I like. You will rarely hear me talk about Rambam or even Rashi. I mean, I'm putting him out here because he's Rashi, but I rarely refer to Rashi commentary on pretty much anything, because I pretty much disagree with him. I'm not a Rashi fan, but that's probably me. I'm just not wise.
Hey,
enough.
last year you mentioned a lot of Rambam.
I like Rambam. I like Ramban. Karl Bachia. I love Kedusha Halev. Rabbi Yitzchak. I love that.
Well, I can only say Rambam and Rambam, so.
It's you know, Karl Bach you could say.
Yeah. You didn't have that up last year, did you?
I don't know. This is one of 2 or 3 volumes on Genesis. This is Karl Bach's commentaries on it. So, you know,
I'm still doing the Severos.
it's fair to say. We love that. So it's how do we not know things? Because we didn't learn them, and that's our teachers' responsibilities. And so, I'm not saying the only interpretation is that Abraham failed. I'm saying that is one that works for me, and that I think everyone should have it presented.
It makes sense.
Okay? For me, it does.
It's reasonable.
For some people, it doesn't. For my friends who are Catholic priests, it doesn't make any sense. For them, he was testing Abraham for absolute obedience, and Abraham passed. And that's their interpretation, and that's fine. And they live their life based upon it, because remember, they have to take a vow of obedience.
Oh, which flies in the face of
All sorts of things.
Judaic teaching, you
Yeah.
know. You can't go removing the first floor or everything will collapse.
You know, they have to vow obedience, and they also do chastity, and that's one of our major teachings. We don't do chastity.
And I'm real thankful for that.
Yeah, we don't do chastity. And they do poverty, and as my friend Father Alexi Smith has said numerous times, all priests take a vow of poverty, and with the exception of the Jesuits, all of them keep it. Because they don't own anything, but they live really, many of them live very nicely. But, so, it's a place to start, a place to do. Okay? Because it's Thanksgiving week, we're not going to have class next Monday, but we'll have a week after.